is understanding your leadership style. It says here that what she is supposed to do is deliver a well-organized speech about some aspect of leadership styles. She can talk about her own or one that she's seen. She can speak in general or particularly. Speech can be any style of speech. The time limit is 5 to 7 minutes. Back to you, Rob. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Hold on a second, Christina.
Just wondering if Fabiola has the correct link to get into the meeting.
I just sent it to her, so I kind of
okay.
Guys.
Correct one. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Thank you again. The next member of our team this evening is our timer, and thank you for stepping into that role this evening, Mary Syrie. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I will be the timer tonight, and we have 3 areas of speaking that will be timed. First of all is Jackie's speech. At 5 minutes, I will hold up the green folder. At 6 minutes, yellow. And at 7 minutes, she'll be ready to wrap it up, and I will hold up the red folder. We have table topics tonight. Table topics are from 1 to 2 minutes. At 1 minute, I will hold up the green folder. 1.5 minutes, the yellow folder. And finally, at 2 minutes, we'll wrap up and I'll hold up the red folder. Lloyd is our speech evaluator, and that is from 2 to 3 minutes. 2 minutes, he will see the green. At 2.5 minutes, he will see the yellow. And at 3 minutes, he will see the red folder. And I will report our timings back at the end of the meeting. Rob.
Thank you very much, Mary. The next member of our crack team asked me if she could be the odd counter, and I said, no, not tonight. I would rather you were the grammarian. So please welcome Pat Whitfield.
Yes, and it's always a joy to be the grammarian. Actually, it's my favorite job because it's an opportunity to listen to the elegant speech that you all will present to the rest of our group, whether it is in a formal speaking role or in some other role. So I'll be looking for wonderful grammar, use of language, idioms, similes, all those great things. And also part of my job is to introduce the word of the day. And since our theme was creating quality, I chose the word worth, W-O-R-T-H, worth. And what it means is that which is desirable, useful, or valuable. I'll be looking forward to your using it and see if it's worth your time to use the word worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. The last member of our team provides a very worthy role in our meeting this evening. And to describe her role and what she's going to be doing, please welcome our odd counter, Kathleen McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. For what it's worth, I will be documenting the words that we all use to fill empty space. We don't know why we do it, but we have a tendency to fall back on crutch words like well and so. We do this especially when we're nervous. And when are we nervous? When we're doing speeches. I'll be keeping track of those. You might not see me making eye contact with you because I'll be trying to listen very intently. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. I would like to turn over the meeting now to our Toastmaster, Christina Stepper. Welcome back, Christina.
Thank you very much. Tonight, we have the honor of hearing from Jackie. Her speech is entitled, That time, my leadership styles helped me become a rock star. This is the second time in 4 months Jackie has given a speech about her leadership style. This time around, she'll briefly introduce you to her leadership styles, as well as the most important ingredients that make up her leadership style recipe. Then she'll tell us the story of that time her leadership style helped her become a rock star. I'm certain it will be worth our time to sit up and take notice as she tells us, once again, the title, That Time My Leadership Styles Helped Me Become a Rock Star. Jackie Graven.
I am a mishmash. I am a Gemini, 2 elements, cusp Cancer at a 3rd, and I am an Enneagram 9, which is the only type that incorporates all the other 8 types as well as itself. So it should come as no surprise to me that I have 5 leadership types that are 2 points from each other. 5 that got either a 22, a 21, or a 20. What are those? Altruistic, affiliative, coaching, innovative, and democratic. I'm not going to bore you by going through all of those, but I would like to give you the 7 biggest ingredients in the recipe of my leadership styles. First is positivity and fostering a positive culture. Second is listening and empathy. Then is community and collaboration. Harmony. I'm an Enneagram 9, so that should come as no surprise. That's the peacemaker. Getting others excited about the future. Encouraging risk-taking and innovation. And encouraging participation and input, like Mary's going to be doing later with us. Let me tell you about the story, the time I became a rock star. I walked into the office. I was a substitute teacher, and I had just showed up to the office of Grassland Elementary School. I was signing in. You know, I am so excited to be here. I've been subbing for a while, and this, believe it or not, is the first time I've gotten to sub in a music class. Yeah, this is why I'm so excited about that, because I'm a piano teacher. I told the receptionist that halfway through my day of subbing, I met the principal. I wondered if I was in trouble, but she came to ask me if I would take a long-term position as the music teacher of the whole elementary school for at least 3 months until the school year ended. Later, I would find out that I was replacing a woman who not only had cancer, that was the reason they told me she was stepping down, but the real reason is she had been forced out because she was so crotchety and didn't like kids and really wanted to be teaching college theory. Why was this so heartbreaking? This was not your average school. Most of the kids had parents and family who were famous songwriters. Singing literally was in their blood. So it was heartbreaking that they had started to hate music. I did 8 things during my time there, incorporating all of my leadership styles that helped me become a rock star. When I would take roll at the very beginning, when I was meeting every student, I would say their name, I would look them in the eye and say, I am so glad you're here. This set the tone for my whole time at Grassland. They sat up and they thought, oh, somebody's excited I'm here. Okay. The second was to demonstrate what was possible to them. I sang them one of my original songs because there was a piano in the room. I played one of my impressive pieces on the piano, Chopin. They sat up with their eyes wide. We need to pay attention to this person. I was becoming a rock star already. I got them excited. Number 3, by doing fun learning activities. I introduced them to instruments they had never even heard of through YouTube, trombone shorty, harpists, the piano guys, and they started to pay attention. I encouraged innovation by teaching them about songwriting, and they started to try their hand. Then number 5, I listened to their answers. I encouraged them to raise their hands and ask a question, telling them no question is stupid. And then when they asked their question, I would take the time to talk with them about it so they knew it was a collaboration between us. Number 6, I promoted an environment of positivity, not only in that classroom, but in the hallways and wherever I would see them. I would say, "Hi, how are you?" And they'd run up and give me a high five and maybe even a hug. "Miss Graybell, hi." I was becoming a rock star. I gave them individual time. Toward the end of the year, we had a talent show, and many of the students decided that they wanted to participate. I had them learn a song, actually several songs that we sang together, but some of the students wanted me to play for them while they sang. This gave us a chance to work one-on-one. Also, I worked with some of them on songwriting. They would come into my room on breaks and I would talk with them and spend time with them. And lastly, I encouraged their unique talents. I hadn't been there very long. It was the first week when I made myself a goal. I said, even though I will only be in these kids' lives for a short amount of time, my goal is to make sure that after I leave, every single student continues with music in some way, whether it's as a songwriter or a vocalist, or they take up an instrument, or they just love a certain aspect of music that they immerse themselves into. I would hear for years afterwards stories of how students started songwriting, created a band, did so many other amazing things with music. And that was almost better than being a rock star. The next year, I came back to the talent show because I had piano students in it this time. And they cheered when they saw me. "Miss Graybell, I was a rock star." There's one thing that I own that is worth almost more than anything else. The thing that shows me that I succeeded. One of my students made this for me. Have feelings, write a song about it. It reminds me of the time I used my leadership skills to become a rock star. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Excellent. If we could have a minute on the clock, Madam Timer, please send your comments to Jackie in the chat box.
We have a minute. Wrap it up. There. Time's up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Everyone finish up. And we will move on now to table topics.
Okay.
And get my screen to cooperate so I'm not distracted.
Me too.
Mary?
Yes, ma'am.
Take it away. If you
Madam
need me to time, let me know.
Okay, thank you. Club officer training is this weekend. If you're a club officer, I hope you've registered and that you plan on attending. I've agreed to lead a 1-hour presentation on club quality meetings. Quality club meetings do these things. They inspire guests to join, they motivate members to renew, and they influence members to volunteer for club and district officer roles. For the second half of my presentation, we will have breakout rooms, and each room will have a different topic to discuss, and then they'll return to the general meeting with feedback. I've been reading a lot of well-written critiques of Toastmasters, and I've come up with some discussion topics that I'm trying out on you tonight, my fellow Toastmasters. Some of my topics might seem controversial, but I'm playing devil's advocate here. It's not about me and my opinion. It's all about trying to stimulate discussion. I have 7 questions, and I have to change my view here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 people. What do you know? That could work out really well. But I'm going to continue this just until 10 after the hour, and then I'd like to have an open mic discussion where anything goes. You can tell me, watch out for these questions, Mary. I think you need to change your approach. Or if you're just dying to answer a question I asked someone else, I would love to hear that too. So it's 5 minutes of anything goes. Okay? You get everything in order here. My first question. Are some of the things we do in Toastmaster meetings irrelevant? Are they past their by date? I'm talking about A-counter and grammarian. If you're giving a speech, you need to speak naturally. The focus should be on saying something interesting and memorable. If you do that, your audience will forget about filler words and overlook your grammar infractions. Unless, of course, you're way over the top, but most of us aren't. Are a few ahs and ums natural and okay? Should Toastmaster meetings put more emphasis on developing better speech content and less emphasis on metrics? Pat, I think I'd like to hear from you on this one.
Well, since you're talking to somebody who teaches public speaking at the college level, I think it's a both and. The content of a speech is extremely important, and how it's knitted together in terms of a beginning, a middle, and an end, or a conclusion, are very important. But at the same time, it's very distracting to have people saying, one of the things that the generation of students I deal with is like keeps coming up, like, and it makes my head spin. I think it's very important to help people to learn how to delete those from their presentation. And the grammarian part of it is, I think it's important to recognize people when they create an interesting turn of a phrase or use a word that might not be familiar to everyone else, but they use it in a way that's meaningful and explains that use, or people can infer its use out of context. So I will go back to my original statement in which I think it's a both and, not an either or. Thank you.
great. Thank you, Pat. I'll write this down. Okay. Christina, I think I do need your help to be timer. It's taking me a little bit too much time to write stuff down. And
Okay.
Is that okay?
Got it.
All right.
Let me get my clock set up. Just a sec.
Okay. Social media is seen by some as a worthy competitor to Toastmasters. You give a speech and you receive comments from the virtual world. Jackie, you have a presence on social media, so this question is for you. How do you compare the experience, the speaking experience you get in the virtual world as opposed to speeches you deliver at Toastmasters? Or another way of looking at this, are YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok viable competitors to Toastmasters?
Great question. I don't think that they cancel each other out. I think they do well in certain ways. And the biggest difference is the feedback. The feedback you get in Toastmasters is coming from a more structured place. For instance, when you go through a project and you read things on pathways in that project that will help you become a better speaker. On social media, which is helpful to get more practice speaking, the feedback that you're getting is more content related. It's all about your content. No one will likely say in a comment, I love that you use that word. Calling back to Pat's point, you won't get a timer. Well, if you're on TikTok, you will, because you can only speak for a minute. But the thing with Toastmasters is you get no redos. You're not going to edit it. You can't piece it together the way that you want. And Toastmasters helps you see an audience and relate to an audience, as opposed to just you and your phone. You may not see anybody. If you do a Facebook Live even, you're just seeing comments. And it's helpful, even over Zoom, to get that feedback, to see your head nodding right there, Mary, to see if I say something that I think is funny, do other people find it funny? Are they going to laugh? I feel both are very valuable, but they don't cancel each other out. They're both elements of a well-rounded speaker growth program. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you. This weekend, I watched several of the top 3 international speech contest winners, and most were excellent. Make no mistake, very, very good. But there were a few that make me cringe. And these speakers elicit some comments of worth from various critics. They sound unnatural, contrived, and they're way too theatrical. And sometimes I feel like I'm just being yelled at. Lloyd, you've participated in many contests. Do you think there is a Toastmaster style that works for winning Toastmaster contests, but just wouldn't fly in the outside world?
Thank you, Mary. The answer is yes. In part, that's because there's an industry that most of you don't know about, and that's the contest coaching industry. Most of the past champions go into the business of coaching people who are trying to win the international contest each year. And several of them have incredibly simple, recognizable styles. When I see people, I know whose course that person took. You know, I can spot a Darren LaCroix coaching customer a mile away just because of his mannerisms. And many of these coaches try to create clones of themselves, and that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. A good coach doesn't do that. The coach who I've worked with in the past, Rich Hopkins, who finished 3rd in the world one year, never tries to do that. What he tries to do is to ask a lot of questions about the speech to try to make me come up with reasons for what I'm saying. So the answer is yes, there is a Toastmasters style. Fads come and go in the contest speeches, just like they do in everything else in our lives. And some years people dance, some years they sing. I always am startled and discomfited when I see one of these things, you know, like somebody suddenly picks up a violin. I'm thinking, oh crap, we're going to see 100 violin speeches in the future. And sure enough, they do come up. Generally, that's a bad technique. You know, it works once. You know, you're witty if you do it once, you're a half wit if you do it twice, and so on. But in the real world, that theatrical style you're talking about just wouldn't fly. You would look, you know, demented. But you'd, or maybe not, but you'd at least look way over rehearsed. But that's the way it goes. That's why, for example, a straight informational speech would fit the rules, but it would never work to win a contest. It just can't. So back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Lloyd. That's interesting. It sounds like it's part Toastmaster style, but what the speech coaches feel will win at Toastmasters. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these critiques that I read were written by speech coaches. So speech evaluations need to offer improvements to the speaker for the speaker to work on. But is Toastmaster too friendly and supportive? Are we challenging our members to reach higher? What are some suggestions, Christina, for raising the bar of our evaluations without alienating the members? And I can do your timing on this, Christina.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that question. Evaluations are helpful, definitely helpful. One thing that concerns me about evaluations is when the evaluator basically gives a book report of the speech they just heard. Perhaps one thing that would be helpful is if there was more clearly defined criteria for the evaluator, more specific things to be looking for, to be commenting on. And that maybe needs to come from the person who's giving the speech, to say, here's a skill that I want to work on, that I would like feedback on, so that the evaluator has something to focus on specifically, even if it isn't part of the criteria of the speech. Another thing that would be helpful in terms of our comments back as a group would be to expand that time to 2 minutes from 1 minute. It's very difficult to get all of the comments down, especially on chat, to be able to share with a speaker the things that you found outstanding and the things that you would like them to consider doing differently, challenge themselves in the future. Thank you, Mary.
Very good. I like that suggestion. Thank you. Hang on. Barbara, you've been asked to make at least one change to the Toastmasters agenda that would promote club quality. What change would that be?
Excuse me, Mary. Thank you for the question. And you said if I was asked, is that correct?
You have been asked. You've been asked, well, I guess, I mean, it's all hypothetical, but you've been asked to make at least one change. It's hypothetical.
To the Toastmasters agenda. Well, that's a hard question. I don't know if I feel
okay. It's maybe taking something off the agenda or augmenting the agenda with something else. Change the timings.
I will say this. How about I talk about this? I believe whoever came up with our agenda is doing an excellent job. I think that it's so well formatted and very clear about having our mission, the Zoom meeting link, which did work for me. I don't know if this was just like a club, if this is just somebody, I don't know if Jackie, whomever designed this, it makes it very clear. And also the theme, having that theme right at the top so that we all can see it, even though sometimes I didn't. I'm looking at it right now. That's why I keep looking down, because I print it off every single time. I'm so old-fashioned that way. I at this point, and of course being president for my first day, I don't have any suggestions. I wanted to actually reach out to Jackie because I know there were some things that Jackie wanted to accomplish during her presidency role that maybe she didn't get to, and that I wanted the opportunity to check in with her, and I plan to do that. And if there are some suggestions there, I will get back to you, Mary, on what those suggestions would be if it is about the agenda. So far, to me, I really appreciate the agenda and how clear and concise and how well structured it is. I think it makes this, it just makes this a more professional meeting. It just adds that professional level to it. So I've seen some pretty bad meeting agendas in the past.
Yes, I always said if there's no agenda, there's no meeting. Somebody doesn't get one out, nobody has to come.
I know I didn't answer your question, so I may have to put a pin in it and come back to it.
That's fine, that's fine. I like what you said though, because that is valuable input to know that it is working. One last question here. This is for Rob. The general evaluator role is to comment on anything and everything that takes place throughout the meeting. Usually we tell ourselves what a great meeting we've had. What can be done to improve the role and feedback of the general evaluator? Rob.
Thank you for that worthy question, Madam Table Topics Master. I believe that it's very important that we have a general evaluation that really touches on both the strong positive points of a meeting as well as areas that we can improve. I personally am done with these Zoom calls. I would like to see more in person, and I know that would exclude Jackie to a certain degree, but I think that we should try and have at least one meeting in person and get back to a little bit of normalcy, because I feel that we lose a little bit of quality in our speeches and feedback from people when we're just doing it on a Zoom call. I hope that we can return to in-person meetings soon. I know there's always an issue of putting a positive spin on any critical analysis during the course of the meeting, whether it's a table topic or a 6 or 7 minute speech, because you want to reinforce the good things to those speakers so that they will come back and continue to do speeches and improve in those speeches. So you have to temper any negative criticism in a way that is going to be viewed as, well, you know, that is something that I need to work on. And I'm not taking it as a personal affront, that, you know, it's something that is going to be helpful to that speaker in the future. I believe that the general evaluator's role is to perpetuate that idea so that more people will take on roles and take on more speeches. I, for one, will continue to do that whenever asked to be the general evaluator. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, everyone. It's 10 after, and poor Kathleen, I hope you don't cry that I'm not going to call on you for one, but that's okay. I would like to get your input either on, you know, if you have something to say about my questions in general, or if you'd like to answer another person's questions, but I'd just like your feedback on how these questions are going to work in breakout sessions and just your general thoughts. Thank you. Pat?
I just would like to make a comment about feedback, and I speak from my role as a teacher educator for more than 30 years. Teachers are constantly in the role of giving feedback to students. Principals are always in the role of evaluating teachers. There's a fundamental rule, and it's this. There's two parts to giving feedback. Part one is positive feedback. You always begin with telling the person what they did well. No matter how hard you have to look, everybody's at least doing something well. And the second thing is not negative, not telling them what they did wrong. It's constructive. So the two elements of feedback should always, and whatever you're giving feedback to anybody, but again, I've got my teacher educator hat on, positive feedback followed by constructive feedback. So a person doesn't walk away from an evaluation session feeling demeaned, feeling that they were less than, but feeling like they have potential. Thank you.
Good advice. Good advice, and important for everyone to remember. I have seen some pretty harsh evaluations. The speaker came back, but you know, I think hard on the other members, probably harder on the other members than it was on the speaker. Christina, did you have something to add?
I was curious if you have seen agendas from other clubs. Is ours typical or is ours different from others?
It's very similar. It's been a few years for me since I've seen other agendas, but they pretty much follow the same format. And my question with that was more like, should we remove anything? Should we add like a cliche counter or take something off the agenda? But the format itself is easy to read. I always find it hard to find the speaker's name on this. I feel like it should be the big headliner, but I get used to it. Jackie has experience in her other clubs.
I have, and they're all somewhat different, which is really interesting. My UK clubs are 2 hours long, so they have a little more time for different things. But one that I really like is the evaluators are evaluated by the general evaluator, and then you vote. And also the table topics are evaluated. There's a separate table topics evaluator. So then everyone votes on best table topic, best evaluator, and then best speaker. Sorry, Tyrion's agreeing. There's some wind outside. But I particularly like the best evaluator because that's something that I haven't put as much stock in, and Lloyd has encouraged me to do more of. And since I know I'm going to get evaluated as an evaluator and I'm going to be voted on, that has changed the way I look at it, and my evaluations have gotten better. And actually I've won best evaluator 2 times over here. So I feel like that makes more emphasis be placed on the quality of the evaluations. And I don't know if that's something that can be focused more on the general evaluations. The general evaluator is just at the end over here. And they basically just evaluate the evaluators, which is a different thing from evaluating the meeting as a whole. But I think more focus with the general evaluator on giving evaluations to the evaluators would maybe potentially help the quality of evaluations go up. So it's not just all fluffy positive, which you want the fluffy, but like Pat said, the constructive, I mean, not the fluffy, you want the positive. I mean, the good feeling aspect of it. But like Pat said, the constructive is really important. So that might be something to look at.
Lloyd has experience with Audible experience. And Lloyd?
Yeah, the agenda we use is one I adapted from the Toastmasters International website. And it's rather heavily customized, but it's their basic template. And that's why you see so many that are somewhat similar to this. The other one that you commonly see is the kind of agenda that's actually generated by a program called Free Toast Host, which is a club administrative bit of software. That our club website is actually on Free Toast Host, and we could be doing agendas on that. The difference is, generally speaking, everybody in the club has to learn how to use Free Toast Host. And I have found that that's a challenge as a teaching task, because if somebody screws up, the agenda won't work, is what it amounts to. But it really is it's a good system if everybody can and will learn how to use it well. The agendas are a little unwieldy. You know, I wanted this to be a one-page shot so that it was simple to use, simple to print out. The Free Toast Host ones tend to come out a couple of pages long, you know. Mm-hmm. But there's no official agenda, no rules about that. And I think pretty much every club more or less slowly develops something they like, and that's the way they work.
And as far as evaluation goes, could you just touch on what Audible Experience does for speech evaluations?
No, there again, that's a much longer meeting. That's an hour and a half to 2 hours, only once a month though. And we use what's called a 4-part evaluation. There are 4 different evaluators for each speech. One person evaluates the speech visually, what the speaker looked like. One evaluates vocally, meaning vocal variety, that kind of thing. One evaluates the content of the speech, and then the 4th evaluator evaluates it as a manual speech for pathways. And so obviously, you know, the evaluations are much more in depth because a lot more time is being devoted to them. That of course is the kicker. If you start adding functions to the agenda, well, then the meeting starts running long, or you have fewer speakers. Something's got to give if we're going to fit our meetings into an hour.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your answers and your feedback and input for me. I will continue to work on these to hone them down and make some good topics for people to discuss. And now back to our Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mary.
Christina.
That exercise I found to be very worthwhile. Hopefully everyone else felt it also to be worthy of the time investment. Hopefully you will get back with us on how the session goes, maybe input from other clubs. Be very interesting to hear. Thank you. This time I am honored to turn the meeting back to our general evaluator, Rob, to hear from his team. Rob?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I was just going to also piggyback on what you said, Christina, in that I hope that a number of people from our club are going to be joining the officer training this weekend. I know I will be, as the VP of Education, because I know 1/100th of what I need to know, because I haven't actually had a chance to sit down with the master, Lloyd Smith, just yet, but I will get to it. At this point in the meeting, I would like to bring back to the forefront our evaluator of this evening, Lloyd Smith. Welcome back, Lloyd.
Okay, thank you, Rob. This was an interesting speech, Jackie. I've done this speech 2 or 3 times. It's a level 2 requirement for about half the paths. And so a number of you will get to do it as well. It's a weird speech in one sense because on the one hand, it's very specific about what they ask you to do, but on the other hand, it's actually very vague because you can approach it a large number of ways. And you picked one that I had never thought about before, and it worked quite well, I thought. First of all, the first subsection, or whatever you want to call it, on the evaluation sheet asked me to talk about what you excelled at. I thought there were two things. One of them was that you signposted your points well, like a good lecturer does. You know, and you almost had to do that because you had two groups of points. There was one group of 5, I think, of your strengths as a leader, or your types, your styles as a leader. And there was another group of 8 things that you did with the kids. So you had to number those in order for them to be comprehensible. It would have just been a confusing mess if you had not done that. So you did it really well. If you think about really good lecturers you have heard, maybe at the college level, they all do that. They all signpost. And that's what makes them so easy to take notes, you know, and if they don't, that's why people complain about their lectures, because nobody can figure out what they're talking about. The second thing I really thought you excelled at was by using the story, the overall story of your experience as a substitute in elementary school music. I shudder at the thought, but anyway, that story to illustrate all of those points. You know, people who love music frequently go crazy in elementary music classes because, I mean, you can imagine why. But the story carried the points you were making very well. It worked. It wasn't an artificial thing that you had just stuck the points on. The points seemed to grow out of the story, which is trickier. What you may want to work on, the number of points. There was a very large number of points. There's some research that shows that most people can't remember more than about 4 or 5 things off of a list. And you had that, you had one group of 5 and one group of 8. I suspect right now, if we had everybody try to write down all of those points, nobody could do it. You probably couldn't do it yourself if you weren't looking at your notes. So that's something to think about. It was a lot to do in a very small period of time, you know. So I'm not sure how to solve it. I guess figure out a way to kind of reduce down. Probably that list of 8 could have been shrunk down because there were only 2 or 3 of them that were really important, you know. But anyway, I guess it's better to try to do a little bit too much than not to do enough. So not that big a problem. The other thing you may want to work on is taking a shot at this theme again, because you wandered into a thicket in educational theory. That is what is the nature of teaching? There are 2 basic schools that kind of fit what you were talking about. One of them is the notion that the teacher is the leader, transmitter of knowledge, stands at the front of the room and tells everybody everything. The other one is called constructivism, where the teacher encourages the student to discover the knowledge. And you are getting at that. Now, that is something that entire books have been written about. So it might be a little tricky to get a grip on it for a speech, but that struck me as something to think about. All in all, very good speech. Well done. I enjoyed it. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Lloyd. Next up is our timer this evening. Mary, do you have a report for us?
I will start the report and then I'll turn it over to Christina.
Okay.
Okay. Jackie, your speech was 7 minutes, 48 seconds. I timed Pat's table topic, which was 1 minute, 18 seconds. And now I will turn it over to Christina for the remainder times.
Thank you, Mary. Jackie's table topic was 1 minute 55. Lloyd, 2 minutes, 10 seconds. Barbara, 1 minute 48. Rob, 1 minute 57. Mine, 1 minute 47. And Lloyd's evaluation, 3 minutes, 32 seconds.
Thank you both for that excellent report. Next up, to give her analysis of the meeting, will be our grammarian. Please welcome back Pat Whitfield.
This was fun tonight. There were really some interesting turns of phrases. Barbara talked about putting a pin in it. I haven't heard that expression in a really long time, and it was a joy to hear it. Jackie started her speech with, "I am a mishmash." Another interesting turn of a phrase. Intriguing. You wonder, what the heck does that mean? she talked about the 7 biggest ingredients in her recipe. Nice metaphor. Really liked that. And the other thing she did very well is she didn't call the composer Chopin. She called him the appropriate French name, Chopin. And I was very impressed with that as somebody who does speak French. It was my first major in college. Lloyd was outstanding in introducing some wonderful phrases, and these are the ones that I caught. Fads come and go in the contest speeches. He talked about the kicker to the meeting, but the one I loved best is the one he just used. We wandered into a thicket of educational theory about teaching as he was evaluating Jackie's speech. The educational theory, a thicket of educational theory. I mean, as somebody who's been a teacher educator and been an educator for 50 years, obviously that caught my attention. Mary's questions were so thought-provoking. They created an opportunity for us to reflect. It wasn't so much the use of language, but it was the structure of the questions. Very nurturing of reflection, which is something we needed to do. As far as the word of the day, Kathleen used worth once. Rob used the adjective form of the verb worthy twice. So he's the champion of the user of the word of the day. Bravo. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Last but not least, because this is a worthy position, is our counter. Please tell us your report, Kathleen McNulty.
Thank you. I'll sizzle through this because we're almost out of time. A great night for everyone. I'll start with the order that people spoke. Barbara is first. Barbara, you did a great job until you got your question. And that was a hard question for you. And that caused 4 a so, 2 repeated words. You were doing great in your presentation today and your first time as president. It was just that question threw you off, and that happens to all of us. Rob, I only caught 1 and I was listening really hard. A so and a you know. Christina, nothing. I listened so hard, Christina. Lloyd, you had a few ahs and a couple of so's. Mary, nice job. You had a well, a couple of buts, a couple of repeated words. Pat, very little to note here. No, 1 well, 1 so. Jackie, in your speech, you did a terrific job. You had 3 so's, 1 but, 1 you know, which I thought was extraordinary for that length of speech. When we got into the general discussion, there were lots of filler words and I just stopped. It didn't seem fair. I'm not just by you, but in general, to have that because we were having a less formal conversation. I think that is my last one. That's my report.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. As general evaluator, I just quickly want to give kind of an overview of tonight's meeting. I thought it went terrifically. Jackie, you were the rock star tonight. You talked about your 5 leadership styles, the 8 points of emphasis with your students, and you were the only person I know who was born under all 12 zodiac signs. So you are truly a rock star. Mary, the table topics, those were thought-provoking questions. I really enjoyed that. I look forward to the leadership meeting this weekend. I hope I am in one of your sections because I know that those are really going to stir some thought and some responses from all the people attending. So that's really cool. The evaluators did a wonderful job. Actually, evaluator, that would be Lloyd. And I really like Barbara's analysis of the agenda because it made me think, even though this is really Lloyd Smith's agenda, I'm going to change a couple things. I'm going to increase the size of the speaker section so that it really does stand out on the agenda. Because we had a little faux pas with the agenda, at least as far as Lloyd was concerned, and it may have happened to a couple of other people, if everyone could please try and jump on a few minutes earlier next week, so that if there is a problem, I'll know for certain that something has to be fixed. It would help me to make sure that going forward, we don't have any issues. I don't have anything to add as the VP of Education. So at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to our club president, Barbara Walters.
Thank you, Rob. And thank you for everyone that stepped into a role tonight at the last minute. I appreciate all of your willingness to make this a very successful meeting. I do want to say that I did see Jackie's leadership skills at work when she, of course, inspired and encouraged me to become the president. So thank you. I will call the meeting. It is 6:32.
Wait a minute, before we leave, who was the meeting host?
That was me.
Okay, so when you get the link to the video, if you'd send me that link, I'll put it on the website. That's another thing we've got to add to our list of stuff to talk about, because it's a multi-step process.